Picture the scene. There's a room full of CIOs, senior tech execs, all staring at me. I'm standing in front, and one of the most powerful and most well-respected people in that room is just tearing me apart out loud in front of everybody there. So for context, we're talking about, at this time, building a large observability environment. It's essentially the systems that help a company see what their tech is doing before the customer discovers a failure or it causes a problem. And our process, my team, began with learning. Every time. We map the environment, we separate what matters from what merely makes noise, and only then do we start building. He's telling me in this moment he wants to skip all of that. He believes his team's already invested heavily in the environment. He believes it's good enough. He's super proud of it. He's done no wrong. And he was done listening to me explain why we needed to learn before we build. He says, we're done with this. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to skip ahead. He points to the end of my process. Every head in the room is looking at me. Everybody knows who this guy is. The account exec in the back is responsible for this customer. It's his relationship. It's his number. It's a huge, meaningful part of his commission for the year. I look back at this CIO and I just say, you can't. He looked at me. Oh, what do you mean we can't? I said, you can't skip this part. He said, will we want to? Kind of like, I don't think you understand. And so I looked at him and I said, then you can't work with us because that is not how we do it. And the room is completely silent. I could feel the account executive in the back just dying a little bit on the inside. And I want you to understand something about that moment. What I said sounded very calm and in command. What I felt was absolutely not. My heart was beating like crazy. My mouth was dry and sticky, and every nerve in me was warning me I had just probably caused a serious problem. I had confused conviction maybe with ego, and I set fire to a super important relationship for my business, for the account executive, etc. But I also knew what would happen if I gave him exactly what he wanted. We would build faster, but we'd be building in the wrong direction. We would give him speed on a calendar, and we would fail in the outcome. I looked at him and said, hoping to gain a little bit of ground, you know your environment better than I do, but I do this every day. You will do it once. You need my opinion, especially because you don't want to hear it. Presentation goes on to end. I honestly figured I had cost my company a customer, maybe a really good account executive his year. But hold that thought, because what happened next taught me almost everything I need to know about executive presence, which is what we're going to talk about today. I'm Tanner Lee Bechtel, and this is Humanity Leads. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. I want to talk about something today that is extremely important, and I don't care if you are an actual executive or if you are a scoutmaster or you are a teacher or you're just getting started in the business world. Executive presence is important. We treat executive presence like a personality trait, though. So some people walk into the room with it, and some people do not. It's the voice, it's the posture, maybe the suit or the steepled fingers, the mysterious ability to touch both hands together and suddenly sound really expensive, right? Presence is not a costume, and it is absolutely not certainty. It's the ability to be clear without pretending you know everything, and candid without making other people look small. It's really hard to do, but that distinction actually matters a lot, because courage without kindness becomes ego, and kindness without courage becomes avoidance. The leader people trust can do both of those things. So, executive presence is calibrated confidence. Remember that line. Clear about what you know, honest about what you don't, and truly willing to carry the consequences of what you recommend. Period. So I wanted to introduce you to a concept that I have thought through a lot over the years that kind of helps me understand this and helps me explain it. It took me about 15 years to probably understand where that kind of presence comes from. So I want to give you a bit of a metaphor. There are two crowded mountains in front of most professionals. On one side is the technical or the expertise mountain. Essentially, be the smartest engineer in the room. Know the system better than anyone. The smartest scientist, smartest teacher, etc. On the other side is essentially, I'll call it the business mountain. It's knowing the numbers and reading the customer and making quick decisions. And both of these mountains in their entirety are packed with talented people. They're packed. But I urge you to look a little closer and realize that there is a smaller mountain in between them, arguably a more valuable one. The person who can explain the business to the technical people and the technology to the business people, the translator, the business whisperer, per se. I have built most of my career standing on that little mountain in the middle, not because I was always the best engineer or even the most savvy business person, but I learned how to help both sides see the same problem in their own language. You may call it empathy. You may call it, distinct human understanding. For many talented professionals, that kind of becomes the next ceiling. Not whether you know enough, whether people can understand you, trust you, and act on what you know. And you see lots of extremely successful professionals doing this. If you've ever watched Steve Jobs present, he has a tendency to make really complex things seem very, very simple. Obviously, consumer brands a little easier, but realistically, he has the method of making you understand and see his vision in words that you understand. We don't have to understand what he's saying. He's very clear. He brings the technical, he brings the human, and he pulls it together. So there was another lesson I had to learn before any of that all worked, though. I have sat in rooms with people whose names everybody knows. Billionaires, founders, executives who can change the temperature of a company realistically by just saying one thing. And I'm going to tell you the least inspiring, most useful thing I probably learned about the whole process. They're dorks. They're dorks. They laugh at the same stupid jokes you and I do. They spill things. They forget names. They have nicer cars, but they are not a different species of people or professional. For years, I would go into rooms like that, waiting for somebody to decide whether I belong there, to tell me if I fit or judge me, or at least be available to feel that judgment. Eventually, I started telling myself something different, though. Nobody in this room is more human than I am. I may not know everything that they know yet, but I can be useful here. I am an expert in my space. So I want you to remember a principle that's extremely important. Presence begins before you speak. It begins when you stop treating everyone else as an authority on whether you deserve to be in a room. Remember that. So then the work becomes practical. Listen for the language you use when you're trying to make yourself smaller. I think, I hope, I guess, maybe, we might. These are all things you say and you may not realize you are saying. And none of those words is automatically weak. Sometimes I think is the most accurate thing you can say. The problem is using it when you are not uncertain, when you know your recommendation, but you soften it before the room has even had the chance to disagree with you. Let me give you an example. So think of these two statements. I think maybe we should wait versus my recommendation is that we wait. Here is why. Same person, same judgment used, but the second sentence gives the room something it can evaluate. And when you genuinely do not know, say that clearly too. Say, I do not know yet. I know these two things. I need this third answer, and I'll have it by Friday. The weak move is not uncertainty. The weak move is hiding uncertainty inside verbal fog or noise. Then there is the permission tagging, something that you tag on to the end of what you say when you're not certain that you are correct or you don't believe people in the room will believe you're correct. And I'm going to give you a few of those words too. The permission tag are words like right, correct. Does that make sense? Sometimes you really are checking understanding, which is really good. But if every sentence ends with a question mark, the room starts to feel that you're asking it to approve your right to speak. Finish the sentence, let it land. If you want to check understanding, ask a real question. Where should I clarify? What questions do you have? What are you seeing differently? That is not insecurity, that's confident curiosity, two very different things. Then there are the filler words. Mine changes, yours probably does too, if you pay attention. For one person, it's so. For another person, it's like. For another, it's a 3-minute answer to a question that required 12 seconds. I have personally explored all of these available options. The filler buys you like a half second of thinking time, but it taxes the first impression of the sentence. It takes away from it. Take the half second. Silence is not a hole that you have to fill. Silence is where the authority lives. So, one more. Use the honest pronoun. And I'm going to explain what that means. So, say I when you mean your decision, your design, or your contribution. Say we when the work belonged to the team. Authority doesn't always have to hide behind we. And integrity doesn't steal from it. If you designed it, say so. If 6 people built it with you, say that too. Executive presence is not taking more credit. It is becoming accurate enough that people know what they can trust you to own. And I want to explain that just a little bit. I frequently in my past have always used the word we, even if there was no we. We just sounded more like what I should do as a leader. I should say we. We worked on this. We spent all evening creating this report or this presentation or what have you. I strongly urge you to share credit where credit is due, but don't fear being confident, being authoritative and confident. If it is your idea and your structure, do not take credit from someone else. That is antithetical to great leadership. But if you did it, take credit for it. We spend a lot of time in leadership trying to nurture and build other people, and sometimes we forget about ourselves. It's okay to lay credit to something you're proud of, to something you did. So don't forget that part. Don't forget you. When you're forming and building and creating great leaders, don't forget that you're one of those people. Shifting gears a little bit. I want to talk about the technology side of the equation. A machine can now, at this point, research your audience, find statistics, it can write great hooks, it can build really amazing presentations before you drink a cup of coffee, right? It can also give you a sentence that sounds perfectly confident. That does not make presence, however, irrelevant. It reveals what presence was always made of, the important part. A machine can write the sentence, it can't stake your reputation on it. It can't repair a relationship after a disagreement. And it can't carry the consequences if the recommendation you made is wrong. But you can. You can. That responsibility is not the burden around executive presence. It's really the source of it. I want to go back to that room that I was in at the beginning. At the end of that presentation, I gathered my things. I took my laptop and my notes, and I tried not to make eye contact with the account executive in the back. And I was still honestly wondering if I had protected the client or if my ego had gotten in the way, or I just really enjoyed being the person willing to say no. And that is a question worth asking yourself. Candor is not automatically noble because it's uncomfortable. And we've all experienced this. Sometimes bluntness is just vanity with stronger posture. Be careful of that. Don't do that. Candor is not automatically noble because it's uncomfortable. Don't forget that statement. The test is what you are protecting. Your status or their outcome. I knew why I had held the line there. I was willing to lose the work rather than selling an approach that I was almost certain would fail. The exec, he stood up and he walked out. I assumed I had done some serious damage or ended that relationship with the presentation, and I was trying to figure out in my head, like, could I justify the reasoning? Was he wrong? Was I wrong? Did I just want to get in a tangle with somebody that I thought was super important in the room? And the strangest thing happens. He comes up behind me and taps me on the shoulder. I quote him, "You are going to be in every meeting I have with this company from now on." And I turned around and looked at him. He's a very tall dude. And I said, "I am?" Kind of like incredulously, but also in a slight shock of amazement. I said, "Am I?" He said, "Yes. And we're going to follow your process." He said, "Put that together and send me a statement of work." And it sounds too good, which is why it ends up in a podcast story. But within a week, we had a 6-figure agreement and one of the largest service deals my team had ever closed. They became a huge client of ours. We did full-scale work, everything from observability to AI ops to network performance data. We did consulting, we did software refactoring, the whole bit. But the agreement is not the reason that I remember that story. I remember it because the moment I stopped trying to win his approval was the moment that I became useful to him. I was not trying to sell him what I had. I was helping him to make the decision he was trying to make, and I was willing to stand behind what I believed in. I was confident in what I said. If you help people make good decisions, you become trusted. If you protect their outcome when your own outcome is at risk, you become unforgettable. That's authority. Not dominance, not performance, calibrated confidence, like we talked about, candidly offered with responsibility attached to it. So here is what I want you to try for this week. I want you to choose one verbal reflex. Maybe it's the "I think," when you already know your recommendation is right. Maybe it is "right" at the end of every sentence. Maybe it is "we" when you're afraid to claim your own contribution. Catch it in one meeting or conversation. Do not replace it with fake certainty. Replace it with accuracy, such as "my recommendation is," or "what I know is," "what I don't know yet is," "here's what I will do next." Then stop. Leave that silence where we used to stuff in permission request. You don't need to become louder. You definitely don't need to become colder. You don't need to act like the smartest person in the room. Become clear enough to be useful, humble enough to remain curious, and courageous enough to tell the truth when the outcome depends on it. AI can help you find the words. It cannot decide what you are willing to stand behind. That part is still yours. I'm Tanner Bechtold. This is Humanity Leads. Thank you for being here. If you know somebody with a brilliant idea who still asks for permission to say it, send them this episode. Subscribe to the channel, stick around, and become part of the conversation. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you all next week.